Welcome to the Game of Attention podcast, the podcast led by industry leaders exploring creative in a technologically advancing world. Hear from experts across the CPG industry, navigating creative effectiveness across channels such as advertising, e-commerce, and in-store. Released twice monthly, this is the podcast you don't want to miss.
So hello and welcome to today's episode of Game of Attention, brought to you by the team at Dragonfly AI. I'm Sophie, your host for today, and I am part of the customer success team here. Today, we'll be discussing indicators of creative success, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Leona and Phil. Welcome to the podcast. So to get us started, Leona, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
I'm Leona and I'm a digital marketing lead, having worked in all sorts of industries along the way, with about 12 years under my belt now.
Nice. Thanks, Leona. And Phil, over to you for an introduction, please.
Thank you. So I'm Phil. I'm responsible for digital marketing effectiveness at Haleon. I'm in a global role, but I've spent some time working in local roles at the company as well. Before that, I was agency side, doing a lot of media planning and buying for digital heavy clients. And the role I'm in now is essentially about enabling our marketeers to maximise the effectiveness they get from all the money that they invest in digital marketing.
Okay then, so we've got a few topics to discuss today, and they're all based around creative success in general. So when we think of creative success, we often lean on performance metrics like clicks or conversions. Leona, what are some alternative indicators of success that go beyond numbers, and what could their value be?
I think a really strong way of looking at success is kind of using the hard data mixed with emotion and sentiment feedback that you get from customers or end users, looking at customers that are coming back or users that are coming back. Are they not just new people that you're acquiring? Are they coming back time and time again? What are they resonating with? And what kind of noise you're seeing? We're quite fortunate now. Well, I say fortunate, maybe not so much, with the wonder of social media, that we see everything, reactions come in almost immediately. So you can kind of gauge how people are feeling, what's landing, what's not, if you've completely missed the mark. I think really kind of looking at the human response to what you're putting out there in the world. But that's not to say hard data doesn't have its place. I just think they can go hand in hand.
That's true. It feels like there's a bit of a balance there. Phil, how do you feel?
Yeah, exactly the same. Just to build on that, I mean, success means in market results, short term and long term, enabling your kind of stakeholders who are responsible for the development of creative and all of the various different assets that may result from a creative idea to demonstrate to their decision makers and their stakeholders that results in market are being driven as a result of that campaign or those assets. And effectiveness is now very hot as a topic in the industry, and measurement professionals are kind of getting their day in the sun, day in the light, to bring kind of measurement to the forefront and show how kind of creative and media can combine to deliver those results, so whether that be sales or whether that be equity, as I say, both in terms of long and short-term results.
Nice. Are there any particular metrics that you've seen that tend to be a little bit more important for creative success?
It very much depends on kind of the job to be done. I mean, Haleon has some huge brands. You may not be familiar with Haleon, but you'll definitely be familiar with the brands that we manufacture and distribute. So Sensodyne toothpaste, Panadol painkillers, and those brands carry with them kind of a lot of longer term equity. So the job to be done is typically about reminding consumers that we're an option, and what are the right moments that we can kind of positively impact their lives and benefit them on their respective health journeys. And when that comes to success, that's about people understanding what our products can do, the efficacy of them, and that's around kind of the equity that the brand holds and the category entry points that we service. But then also you're looking at revenue growth, penetration, are we reaching new consumers? So it's about having a measurement toolkit that kind of services everything that you need to measure as a business. And I feel like creative is one of the ways you can slice those results, and amongst all the other ways that you can slice those results as well, to understand the contribution that it's having.
That's so true. And I think that especially the areas that the Haleon brand sit in. They're very competitive. And is there a way that metrics like memorability can provide an extra edge when it comes to the campaigns that are being distributed?
For sure. It goes without saying, or hopefully it goes without saying, unless you're kind of people see you, recognise you, and hold you in their memories, it's very difficult to have any impact whatsoever. I mean, it's one of the things that we're wrestling with all the time is how much kind of attention and memorability does a big brand like us need. I love this time of year because it's when everyone starts seeing the Coca-Cola ad on TV, and it only takes about 1 second to know that this year they managed to make it even a bit more complicated with the whole kind of like AI layered into the creative process. But that's one of those examples of an advert that you don't need 5, 6, 20 seconds to, that's that. It's instantly recognizable, and so is it with the other kind of Christmas ads as well. Whereas how much memory, how much attention you need is very much a hot topic to make sure that you're cutting through in the first place, but you're not almost, I would say, like being greedy with how much attention you're kind of trying to grab, because there's no point trying to hold a consumer's attention and be memorable for 20 seconds when really it only takes 5 seconds to do that job. So I think we are very focused on being memorable and recognised, but also cognizant of what it actually takes to do the job that we're trying to do in the kind of minds of the consumer.
That's so true. And with the Christmas ads this time of year, there's always a lot of talk around them. They're always in the press. So I was guessing off the back of that then, Leona, I know that the Christmas ads can be quite an emotional response from them.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you had any comments on that too.
Yeah, I think memorability can span in terms of, how long you've kept the customer's attention for, but also how do people feel when they watch, like, for example, the John Lewis ads. People haven't even seen them before they come out each year, yet they're banking on how much they're going to cry. And that's how they're measuring their success. Controversially, I don't love this year because I didn't cry. But again, that's another way it's memorable because I didn't cry at this one. So I think people have that kind of affinity with the brand, knowing how it makes them feel without even, having seen an intro to an ad. But I'm starting to see more long form kind of communication in the emotional space. Volvo have got their new ad out at the moment about their cars that's adaptable for every life event. And again, maybe I'm just a weeper, but again, it was just so well done. It was relatable to somebody at every point, at whatever stage they are at in their lives. And it was like watching a TV series. So it was really lovely and a really nice feel to come away with. And I personally don't drive, and I'm sat there going, I'd quite like a Volvo to see me through to my old days. So it's doing something for me. So yeah, I think there's a lot more time and care being put into tapping into how people feel and kind of almost egging you on to give an emotional response.
That's so true. And I know you mentioned Volvo, but I've read a little bit recently about Jaguar's rebrand.
Yes.
Big one. No, it's a bit of a curveball and a controversial topic, but I wonder if either of you had any comments, off the back of how you felt about those as people that work in, marketing and advertising for a living.
I think it's clever. I really do. I agree. It looks, wow. I don't think it looks great. And all I'm seeing is articles about the biggest mistake that they could have ever made. But everybody's watching it. Everybody's looking to see what this big mistake is. It could be is it like a marketing technique, or have they really just gone, we'll, get rid of all of that history? Who knows? But I'm here for the drama.
Aren't we all? Phil, are you also here for the drama?
I'm proudly sitting on the fence. There's a lot of commentary about it, which in itself is good. We're in a bit of an echo chamber in the industry, so we're hearing a lot of voices from kind of thought leadership and what have you, which is really interesting. But ultimately, the time will tell, and if the objective is memorability and noticeability, tick, if the objective is turn around what I believe to be, or I've seen to be relatively poor revenue and sales in the last few years, then only time will tell on that one. And I think it's going to be a great example of connecting the kind of the pre-testing with the post-testing and going, okay, well, it may have pre-tested very well. We don't know. Kind of, we weren't sitting in that room. We don't know how they kind of came about. The whatever insight has driven the creative process that's then kind of come to the platform and then result in that asset being produced, and how they've tested that, who they've tested it with, etc. But ultimately, if they're able to connect it to kind of in market performance and the metrics that they want to drive are being driven, no pun intended, then good on them. Good on them for doing something kind of bold and brave. But it's probably too early to judge it without knowing kind of the brief that's sat behind it and the metrics that they're trying to drive in the short and the long term.
That's so true, because as far as we know, we've only really heard from the general public so far, and not necessarily the ones that created it. So maybe at some point we'll hear from Jaguar too. But even comparing the Volvo ad and the Jaguar ad, they will probably both have lasting impacts on the market. One for a more emotional sense in terms of Volvo, and then a little bit more of the curveball sense from Jaguar. But are there any signs that you'd look out for that would indicate a campaign has that lasting impact on the market?
For me, it's kind of social listening. My original background in marketing was heavily social media led, and I didn't really have those tools available. Looking back, it's it's almost resonant with the Mad Men era. We didn't have access to any of this new shiny tech that we have now. So it was just a bit finger in the air, guess what's going to fly, what's not, how many people are following us. Whereas now we have all of these tools to really kind of listen in or spy on what people are thinking and how they're reacting to things. So we're really getting that in the moment response, knowing if it is something that people are resonating with. Maybe the next year, are they saying, oh, it wasn't as good as their campaign this time last year, or do you remember this ad that they produced? Kind of seeing how people are speaking about the brand in general. And I don't just mean that in terms of Christmas ads, but across the board. You could launch a new product. Are they still talking about it 3 months down the line? Oh, I really enjoy what they've done with this product. How's it landing? Are people coming back again and still talking about what you're doing? So for me, it's definitely like an enlightening experience having new tech. I say new, but in the last, a lot's changed in the 12 years. So it's nice having that insight.
That's so true. Can you think of any specific examples of the tech that means that we can start measuring that lasting impact?
I think most kind of social tools at the moment have a listening arm to it. So I know Brandwatch kind of always pioneering and trying to bring you the best that you can have, basically. But there are also some more affordable, shall we say, tools that for businesses of all sizes as well that can give you the same. And to be honest, sometimes it's better to have a variation that's not costing you an arm and a leg. So I think most packages that you can get now will offer some arm of market research and social listening.
When I ask you to think of an advert from any point, is there any particular advert that stands out for you in the past that is? Because if you can remember it, then it's probably had a bit of a lasting impact on the market too.
I feel there are quite a lot. I'm trying to cipher through them. It's like when somebody asks you what's your favourite colour off the cuff. I'm like, I don't know. There are 9 million colours. Several. To be honest, I'm very much a sucker for a John Lewis advert, and it was the little boy holding the present, and it was a gift. It was the excitement of giving the gift to somebody else, not that he was excited to open his own presents. And that was years ago, and I still go, oh, do you remember the one with the Smiths and the little boy that was excited to give presents? So I think I'm just in my festive zone at the moment. So that's what's coming to mind at the moment.
True. And for anyone that's listening, we're recording late November. So Christmas is very much in full swing.
Dark.
How about you, Phil? Would you agree that there are some certain signs that indicate that a campaign will have more of a lasting impact?
Yeah, and I think there's, to maybe flip the question a little bit, there's a lot of noise as well. Like we run a fair amount of brand lift studies. Depending on who you work with and the setup of your campaign, you might you might run a couple of cells. You might be able to compare a couple of assets against each other, or 3 assets against each other, and see the comparative lift against each other, and then you're measuring maybe over 7 days over exposure. There can be sometimes a risk of taking that as, we got an X percentage lift versus non-exposure on these key metrics, and then run away with yourself and start to think that that's it, the job's done, without thinking about, okay, well, the kind of the job of advertising is kind of twofold. It's long term and short term, and without meaning to diminish brand lift studies. If you're just going on 7 days worth of data, you've got to make sure that did you reach the right profile of consumer? Did you reach your total target audience with that 7 day period? That's a forced exposure, almost kind of experiment. And what you want to understand is whether or not total campaign awareness is increasing over time, and spontaneous awareness is increasing over time. So we're very much in the camp that we have our brand tracking always on for our big brand market combinations, to ensure those key equity metrics are consistently moving in the right direction, or where they want them to be. And then you've also got to make sure there's education around, these are short-term indicators of performance, but they're not the only thing you should be measuring. And I think one of the criticisms of the industry recently has been, a focus on where out rather than where in, and trying to almost respond to the market too quickly and too dynamically, and you're not giving your campaigns a chance to actually kind of bed in. And how many times do people need to see it to be able to remember it and it take effect? There are very few advertisers that have that luck of being like instantaneously memorable. The one at the minute for me is the Nike adverts with Rafa Nadal, and so I'm a big tennis fan, and he's just retired. He just played his final competitive match, and they're featuring Rafa Nadal in a lot of their TV spots here in the UK. And it's a real heartstringer, because it's like, obviously he's retiring, he's had a magnificent career, and I think the tagline is basically, what it takes is everything. And you just know his profile as an athlete is he's put everything into his career, everything into every point, and they've just harnessed that association with kind of him as an athlete and a person so well at the moment. And they're not trying to flog any products or anything, but it really, for me, is a great ad that when I see it, I'm like, yeah, spot on, well done. And it didn't take hours and hours of process and creative. It's just like, we've got a great asset, very memorable one, we're going to utilise that. And that's the one I remember at the minute for some reason, just probably because it's relatable to me and kind of sticks with me.
That's so true. And the ad is truly a celebration of him as well, and their partnership over the years. And I think there's been quite a few really great partnerships in the past, especially in the sports and like apparel world. And I think hopefully we'll get to see more of those, because you're right, if you're connected to the sport in any way, then it's a really great reminder of the link to the brand also, before probably the partnership is soon to end and maybe you won't be seeing so much of Rafa wearing the brand anymore going forwards, which is...
And it's the consistency as well. They're featuring Serena, Roger Federer, their association with tennis and athletes and other kind of sports persons as well. That's just really consistent. Just having that is, they're very fortunate to have that and that connectivity. But the other one that is We Buy Any Car, like the jingle for that is horribly catchy. But then they're not sitting there going, oh God, we need to do a refresh, or we need to kind of recut something else. It's just they're sticking with something that's really memorable, and and just really consistent. And sure, there'll be iterations of it and whatnot and evolutions, but what they've stuck with there. So I think that's something to be said, and to kind of bring it back to the question you asked, that's something you're going to measure over a longer period of time. It's not going to be something that we get one brand lift study and then we go, oh no, we've got to throw this away, or one sales lift study and one slightly modest ROI comes through, and you're kind of panicking and having to make a split decision. That's unfortunately maybe a bit too much of what we're seeing more recently.
I think that kind of is indicative of the society that we're in at the moment, in that everything is so bite-sized and so quick, and trends come and go within minutes, and it's really tricky to keep up when, you know, TikTok kind of blew up in lockdown. There are songs that take off, there are catchphrases that take off, that, you know, some brands do have that flexibility to be able to hop on and pile on loads of budget and really capitalize on one buzzword. Whereas I think, you know, for people that are a little bit, I wouldn't say static, but a little bit more, you know, more planning goes into a campaign in terms of not all reactive. It's so hard to pivot when you've put months and months into a creative campaign and you know what outcomes you want, and then some 13-year-old jumps on TikTok and comes up with a new sentence that's what everyone's saying. It's really tricky. So it's hard to kind of spread that message within, you know, a team, and to escalate it higher up and say we need to give our campaigns a chance when there's so much noise in the space of everyone jumping on a trend. It's just not possible for, you know, maybe smaller companies or people with more modest budgets. Everything is a little bit speedier. We don't have that time to really sit back and give our campaigns the TLC that they deserve, or that we'd really like to, because the world is just moving so quickly.
So true. Can you think of any brands that are doing reactive social media really well at the moment?
Any brand that changed their colour scheme to green for Brat Summer, which
Yeah,
many of them, I didn't even know what it meant. I had to Google it. But I think
I'm definitely aged out of Brat Summer.
Same. Like, oh God, I feel my age. But I think anybody that's hopping on these big songs, and to be honest, I'm quite fortunate that I have, you know, colleagues that are older than me, the same age of me, but I have people younger than me as well. And I'm like, please just tell me what's important. Tell me what the trends are, because I can't keep up at all. So to be honest, no, I can't give you an example because I protect my peace. I don't need to be on TikTok all the time.
Oh, fair enough. How about you, Phil? Are you into the TikTok?
No, I don't have TikTok. I don't have Snapchat. I know from it's kind of some thing I did with Effie that Audi. Audi have got a lot of credibility in the kind of organic social space. I think they were participating in the conversation around Jaguar, and there's kind of other examples of their long-running feud with M&S around Colin the Caterpillar and what have you. And I think they've again taken that and without being a broken record, like really leaned into it consistently. Like it wasn't just a thing they tried to do once. And on top of that, or I should say, underpinning that is a very, I'm sure, well informed and executed paid media strategy as well, across TV, out of home, and paid social as well. It just happens to be the thing that garners a lot of attention and interest, because it's kind of Specsavers is another one. You know, the fact they're able to use should have gone to Specsavers in pretty much any context, I think is great. Meanwhile, I think, yeah, because it's all public now, I think they won an award recently for the work they did around home visits, and it's kind of a less sexy part of their business, in that they have optometrists and teams that will go to people's houses if you need, but the consistency of the campaign wasn't lost in that. They still kind of used the slightly cheeky, slightly fun kind of way of talking about themselves and the category within that kind of proposition. I think it won an award. I think it was an Effie of some description. But again, it just looks really awkward, isn't it, when a brand tries to kind of, maybe the first time, without necessarily the right to play. That's where the strategic kind of willpower comes in. Like, don't participate because you don't have the credibility or the right to do so. But those two brands for me, Audi and Specsavers, doing some really kind of creative and fun stuff.
What advice would you give to creative teams who are traditionally data focused on incorporating attention, emotion, and memorability into their measuring toolkit?
For me, I would remind them to look at their consumer or customer as not just pound signs or a bit of extra data to add to your database, but an actual human being that you could walk past in the street, you could meet at the pub or the gym. Like, they are just another person in their own universe who have life moments that you can relate to, even if it's a very tenuous link, there is something that you can connect to. So rather than just trying to get the most out of them, try and really find a way to pinpoint those moments. And even if it means taking a step back and going for a softer approach, I think the way that we respond to things in, our purchasing behavior and our how we move around a website, that kind of thing, that's all indicative of who we are as people. So use it to actually look at who they are rather than, oh, they clicked 3 times here, that's great, let's send them there again. Why did they do that? Always ask why.
So true. Phil, would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I think from experience and with the extra intelligence that you're able to get now, as solutions kind of there's a convergence of some kind of creative testing solutions, is that how can you use this new data to complement what you already have? Because I think there's a relatively limited bandwidth in most marketers' world, given how much they have to cover across advertising, but also distribution and price and all the other kind of levers that they're trying to pull on to kind of deliver profitable growth for their brand. How can it be complementary of what they were already receiving? So, for example, we're a large advertiser, already work with a very well-established creative pre-testing partner, and we start kind of getting this data in from another source. How does it complement that? And then how does that align with the actual decision you're trying to make as a marketeer? Because just by adding extra data, that doesn't always make things better in many different kind of walks of kind of the marketeer's life. Just throwing more data at the problem isn't always the right thing. So I think 100% it's about understanding, okay, what incrementality does it offer me? What decision making can I make a result of having it? Is it about contextualizing something, or is it about doing something at a greater scale, or doing it faster than I did before? Or is it? I think one of the topics at the moment is around the application of AI versus consumer testing, and AI being great, delivering more scale than consumer testing. Does it come with the same accuracy? Yes or no? Does it give you the same richness? Yes or no? All of those things as well. So I think it's understanding this new data in the context of what you already had, and then figuring out kind of what decisions you need to make, and then how it all kind of fits together to make that decision making easier than it was before. Because if it makes things more complicated and more difficult, or need to involve more people and more layers, then it's actually probably more harm than necessarily would be good.
That's so true. Can you see any priorities that you might have at Haleon over the next few months that you might want to start looking a little bit more into?
Well, it's 100%. It's the proliferation of the digital space. I think we are dealing with more and more and more environments and platforms, and within those platforms, take YouTube as a prime example. There's skippable formats, non-skippable formats, shorts, bumpers. The list goes on. Then you kind of pivot over to Meta, and they probably got like between 8 and 15 formats you can apply to, and how much customization do each of these formats require from ultimately one kind of copy type does it need, and then making it fit for platform, which is where there's been an emergence of kind of companies operating in that space. I think that's the big priority, is making sure that we can have the right level of due diligence across the digital ecosystem, as we have had traditionally for TV advertising, and how that's expanded into connected TV and so forth. And then where you might be spending, let's just say a kind of 6-figure amount on a TV buy, you then slice that by so many different numbers of formats and environments for digital. Like, how much rigor do you need to put behind £1,000 spend on a format on Snapchat versus maybe £1 million being spent on ITV? And those kind of decisions, I think, are the kind of topic of the day at the moment, about responding to the fact that there's an explosion of digital assets, and what's the right level of testing and measurement to put on those assets to to make sure that they're working as hard as they possibly can, but getting the trade-off right between the investment you make in measurement and testing versus actually the money you're spending promoting those to real consumers.
That's so true. Am I right in thinking that currently for a lot of brands, the main creative goes into that large scale TV ad, and then that's then cut down into different platforms to best fit in that way? Do you see a future where actually they'll start creating those ads specifically for the digital space and then kind of turning that up into the TV world, or do you think that might just be a step too far?
Well, thankfully we're already past that. I'm glad to say we've got conversations, because we work in a kind of category model where you've got a category team or a global Sensodyne team working on a global toolkit for all of our markets, and then how that's localized in Thailand versus the US versus Spain. Obviously there's nuance there about the kind of the consumers and the jobs to be done for that particular brand and things, but we're definitely seeing far more fit for platform content created for either TikTok or YouTube, whether that's a shorts ad or whether that's a non-skippable ad. So that is adding complexity to the process, to the skill sets required, to the tools that you need to test and to do all those things as well. So that shouldn't be overlooked. That all needs to go on in the background to kind of maybe turn what is a fantastic idea into a brilliantly activated idea or brilliantly executed idea, because you can fall down in many different ways within digital. And then, of course, TV kind of transforming in some markets faster than others into kind of more connected TV and broadcast of VOD and streaming, and again, how you manage those environments as well. So without being a doomsmonger, it is quite complicated. It is quite complicated when it comes to creative, and I think everyone just needs to be on their toes in terms of adapting to those into those dynamics and understanding when you need to build fit for purpose, when you can repurpose something, and so on and so forth. It's just making sure you're armed with the right data to make those decisions, and you have confidence in that decision when you make it.
Switching over a little bit to attention. So can attention metrics reveal untapped market segments or consumer interests, and how might these insights then lead into a strategic shift for a brand?
I think when you look at the attention metric space, it's still super nascent to start off with. So, and then you've had this media track and this creative track kind of running in parallel for a while. Companies more specializing in measuring and predicting attention in media, Amplified Intelligence, Lumen, Adelaide, and the such. And then on the creative side, there's been an explosion of kind of companies working in this space as well, and there is convergence there. So I think that's one of the biggest opportunities at the moment, is the convergence and saying, okay, so we understand how much attention we think this advert is going to get in this environment. However, this environment typically only gives you 2 seconds, and we think that we need 6 seconds to do this job effectively. So you can't put that square peg in that round hole. So I think that's one of the kind of more operational enlightenments that we've had recently is going, okay, well, we can measure how much attention these platforms generally get, these environments generally get, and how do we build creative and certain assets that are going to do a job in those spaces, because you're going to have to be very interesting or very impactful to stretch the elasticity of that ad placement beyond what its norms are. So I think that's one really interesting area where the two are working together and helping us to make better decisions about what an advert needs to be able to accomplish in a certain set period of time, and that is consumer led, because the behavior of the consumers on the platforms is really what tells us how much time you're going to get within a TikTok or a Snapchat or an Instagram or whatever it might be.
That's true. Time is so precious nowadays, especially on social media. Leona, would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Kind of ties back to what I was saying before about attention span being decreased drastically over the last few years. But in terms of attention metrics in measuring your campaigns, I think it's looking into, I suppose this is where, for me, the hard data does come in, as well as the nice fluffy stuff that I love to report on, but looking at the who is reacting. We can set out our target audiences to the nth degree, get super granular, because we know who our people are, who we want to shop, but look at where it actually lands, look at who is actually shopping, or look at who is browsing or using you as a resource, that kind of thing, and seeing if they match your audience insight data. If they do, then great, you're kind of where you want to be, but you could find that it's the complete opposite kind of personality that you were expecting, and trying to get to the bottom of why they're paying attention to the ads that you're putting out there. Why do they want to know? Why are they asking the questions that they're asking? And then you've got yourself a whole other ad set, a whole different group of people that you can tailor content to, do different spins on. So it's an evolving beast. I think there's nothing stays the same for very long, but I think data's quite like a Pandora's box. You open it and then it's just more and more comes out, and you're like, no, you don't necessarily want to know all of it. But there are some golden nuggets in there that you can really tap into that you might never have thought of looking at. So it's, again, not just taking the numbers, but looking at each number as the person that they are and why they're doing what they're doing.
That's so true. And I think that might just be the perfect point to end on today, because, although we have all this data available, what it comes down to at the end of the day is the individuals, I think. So thank you both for joining me today, Leona, Phil. It was great talking about creative success with you, and hopefully we can catch up again soon. Thanks for listening, everyone.
That's a wrap for this episode. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. Your support helps us keep bringing you fresh insights and expert advice. Want more content like this? Head over to dragonflyai.co and check out our resources page. Thanks for listening to Game of Attention. See you next time.